Why should Instagram have all the art fun?
Why not bring the art conversation to LinkedIn?
I'm Melissa, an artist and a culture sleuth.
I'm Nina. I'm a visual storyteller, a LinkedIn content creator, and a photographer.
Creativity is as vital to a successful business venture as it is to an artist.
So why is the conversation about art and business segregated to different media platforms?
That's what led us to create a live show on LinkedIn.
We interview fascinating experts and explore art and how it relates to business, technology, and education.
Welcome to An Artful Life, curious conversations about the ways humans make and use art.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition to An Artful Life. Welcome, Melissa. Welcome, Criss. And we're very excited to have our guest today from Down Under, which is also why we're all sitting in darkness, but for Criss, because we're over many different time zones, and you're actually listening to a pre-recorded conversation. So nevertheless, welcome. If you have questions, hit them up.
Welcome, everybody.
And we'll get to them later. Anyway, Melissa, why don't you take it away and introduce our guest?
I would love to. Our guest, Criss Canning, is joining us from Australia. She was born in Melbourne and is widely regarded as one of Australia's most spectacular artists. That is my opinion, but those are not my words. It's from all over the press there in Australia. She is also celebrating this year 60 years of being an artist. So I did the math. That's over 22,000 days of showing up at the easel in search of excellence and beauty. And so therefore, it is not surprising that her work is sought after by private collectors and corporations all over the world, and also museums. Among them, the Australia National Gallery, New South Wales, Cairns, and Ballarat museums, where she had in 2008, I think, a retrospective. Her work is in all sorts of books, including this most recent monograph. It's beautiful. It's available on the internet. And Criss, we are thrilled to have you with us. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Lovely to be here.
It's good to be together. We wanted to start for the few Americans who don't know you well, if you'd be willing to say a little bit about how you got started as an artist.
Okay, well, yeah, 60 years ago. So at that time, at the tender age of 17, I was actually doing classical ballet and thought that's where my life was going. And I started work, and my boss, employer, introduced me to his painting teacher, having seen my folio of art that I'd done over the years. And well, what can I say? Like I took classes after work in portraiture and still life. And when I was 18, I could get my car license and joined the landscape classes up in the hills. And after 12 months of painting, I gave up ballet, much to the horror of my family and my teacher. I'd won a scholarship, and I think everybody had great hopes for me. But no, I look back and I was still very young and quite immature, to be honest. And I made that decision quite confidently. And, 60 years on, here I am, and absolutely still loving my work. You would think perhaps after 60 years that you may become a bit jaded or feel like, oh, you've done it all, you've said it all. But it couldn't be more the opposite.
Wow.
I'm so intrigued, still learning. You never stop learning, I'm quite sure. I mean, that sounds like a cliche, but it actually is true. Every painting teaches you something new. And so, yes, here I am. I must say, like, in all honesty, it is not an easy journey. And Melissa, you'd understand that too as a painter. There were very difficult times when I was younger and a single mum after my marriage ended.
Wow.
And you go to the bank and you need a loan to buy a house, and you say in one sentence, I'm an artist and a single mum.
Oh.
But anyway, it was pretty tough. But I suppose if you feel it's your calling and the thing that makes you tick, basically, which it is for me, it's sort of my breathing. You focus on, and you have to be, I think, a bit bloody minded and determined that if it's the thing you love and you can't imagine life without it, that you just fight for it. And that has been the case. At times I've really had to fight hard for it. And here I am now, all this time later, feeling incredibly blessed that I do what I love. And, to be able to say that in all honesty I feel very privileged that I can do that and I can support myself from my work.
That's beautiful. Talking of beauty, you once said my aim is always to create something of beauty.
Yes,
Speak to that.
Absolutely. It really, I think colour and beauty are the two things that drive my work. Like I think I've said in the book, we cannot truly overestimate how important beauty is in our lives. I think it is the thing that nourishes us. And of course, I've been very fortunate to marry a man who grows flowers. So I've been for the last 40 years surrounded by amazing beauty, as the viewers will see in one of the photographs that you've chosen of where we have lived. We've only just moved to a new home after 37 years at Lamley Nursery that David runs, my husband runs. So yes, stepping out of my door, looking out of any of the windows in the house, there's just beauty everywhere, and people come from all over Australia to see our gardens. So we started off with bare paddocks and weeds and a house that was a bit derelict. But over that time, we have created a place that not only for ourselves, but for lots of other people has become a really important place to visit and I think be nourished. Yeah. So
I love that, being nourished. Yeah. And beauty is so important for all of us. I agree.
yeah. And
Nina has a strong connection to the Alps, being Swiss, and I've really enjoyed her photographic work from the Alps.
oh yes, absolutely glorious. I think
They photograph themselves, it's just basically aim the camera and it's gorgeous.
yeah. Yes.
And speaking of Switzerland, has travel been at all inspirational or pivotal for you in your work?
Well, look, I didn't have the opportunity to travel overseas until I was 39, and that was after I'd finished reading Charmian Cliff's book, Mermaid Singing. Charmian Cliff was a writer married to quite famous George Johnson, Australian author, and they went to live on Hydra with their family, and Charmian and George both continued writing, but she wrote this wonderful book, Mermaid Singing, and I read that book. I was still a single mum, And her words just painted such incredible images, especially of the colour and the light of Greece. And so I very naively actually just packed up my kids, my two children, and said, we're going to live in the Greek islands for a year. Really didn't have a clue what I was doing, but somehow made it work. So that was such an important year. Like getting used to, and you'll probably relate to this, Melissa, but the light so different, like the light in Greece compared to Australia was very different, but fascinating, especially fascinating in the shadows, how there were these beautiful veils of colour, almost like veils overlaid. It was so wonderful. I didn't have a studio, so I was just doing landscape and seascapes. And again, you know, it sounds very romantic living in the Greek islands, and there were aspects of it that were wonderful on that level. Also quite challenging living and working in a different country. I didn't have any language, a Greek language that I could speak. And we were, when we arrived there, it was still winter, so there were no tourists. So it was, you know, like a learning curve. But I managed to paint a whole exhibition there. I was working on, I never worked from photographs, I should mention that. And so I was working on site and not doing really huge works, just sort of, you know, I suppose 12 by 16 inches, if we can talk in inches. And the thing that happened during that 12 months is difficult to explain, but I was getting images of still life. Like if I was sleeping, they were coming in my dreams. And if I was having the afternoon siesta, which you do when it's terribly hot in the afternoon, in that half asleep state, these images of still life, it was almost like when I was a child and my father would put photographs up on the wall, you know, of his trips, and we'd all be sitting and looking at these images, and it was almost like these images flashing in front of my eyes. And the colour was extraordinary, so beautiful. And so I don't understand what was happening, except that I fell in love with still life. I'd always done still life, but I was suddenly in love with still life from these images. And when I came back to Australia, I had my Greek exhibition. And from that moment on, which is, oh gosh, it was 86, so what is that, 39 years ago, I've done nothing but still life. And so sort of felt as though still life had found me as much as I'd found it, in a strange way. And when people say now to me, what do you paint? I sort of do a little cringe, because if they don't know the work and you say still life, I'm always thinking, oh, they'll be thinking brown bottles and grapes and and see the cogs sort of turning. And yes, but anyway, for me, it is the most exciting genre. I still just completely adore it. And so here I am, doing what I love, and I think just very, very fortunate to be able to do that.
Can you articulate what it is that you love about still life? Have you, Trevor, tried to put that into words? I love it too, and I have a difficult time explaining why. So I'm really curious about your thoughts.
Well, I think it is, Melissa, because I think it's about feeling. It's not just a really cerebral sort of thing. It's, for me personally, very much a feeling. A response to colour probably is one of the largest aspects. Like, of course, it involves balance, harmony, like setting up things. Well, I'll sort of explain a bit about how I do approach it. Sometimes it will be maybe some flowers that I've started with. Other times there's no flowers, but it'll be one particular thing that will just spark an idea. And then I build around that initial thing. So say it's flowers, well, then I'll set up and I'll start drawing in objects and fabrics, whatever, to, I guess, complement it, strengthen it, make it more interesting. Sometimes I add little weird elements that don't make sense to anyone else but me. So as the paintings have gone on over the 60-year period, they're slowly evolving. They're actually being pared down from the earlier works where there was a lot more decoration within them, a lot more objects. So I guess it's perhaps my interest in Japanese culture has played a part in that. So yes, it's very much about balance, and that is very, very finely tuned. Sometimes I can start setting something up and it will take maybe an hour or two and it all just falls into place. Very often I battle away, and sometimes that might be for days where I've got something set up and I think, yeah, it's almost right, but it's not quite right. Mm-hmm. And if it's not quite right, I don't start, because the thing I'm going to work on will be over several weeks, sometimes over several months. And if you haven't got it right at that point, you're going to run into trouble somewhere along that journey. So, yeah, very important. It's right in every aspect before you start approaching that canvas. Yeah, so I guess, it's going to be different for all of us, because all of us have a different vision. We bring different things to it. But for me, it is beauty, colour, balance, harmony, light. I'm fascinated the way objects play off each other. And strengthen each other. I often think of it like people. Like sometimes we're, as people, happy to stand alone and we feel strong in that position. Other times we want to be close to people we love or care for or relate to, and we bounce off each other, and you feel stronger. So yeah, it's, like, do we really truly completely understand that creative process? I'm not sure we do. Even after 60 years, do I completely understand it? No. I just know what makes me feel good when I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. And I really think that is so important, that we're not trying to please anyone else when we're creating. Mm-hmm. Like, we hope that when the work leaves us, that other people will receive it. And you must understand that it's not always going to be everybody's taste or great for those who see it. And, you know, when I was young, if someone made a criticism, I would be really knocked around by it because you haven't got a lot of confidence still. As an older person, I really don't give a damn. I'm very happy when people like or love, pardon me, love them, but I'm doing it for me. And then it leaves me and it goes out into the world. And I've been very fortunate that I've been, in later years especially, very successful when the work has gone to the galleries. But it's a complex journey, isn't it? Because it's not like typing or whatever. It's so much of ourselves at some very deep, very sensitive, fragile level is going into the work. So, yeah, as I say, I often put a little hashtag on my painting saying, I love painting.
It shows. You don't need the hashtag. It's obvious.
And speaking of that, why don't we look at a few issues? I mean, a few of the paintings. I put one up to try to have a visual while you were talking about your different elements. And here's another one. I think this is the tribute to Carlos Scarpa.
That's correct, yes. Homage to Carlos Scarpa. And this one, the idea was sparked. My sister and I were traveling to Venice. My stepfather, Giovanni, came from a little village quite close to Venice. And
Wow.
yes, and Giovanni and my mother used to travel back to see his family, but his family had never come to Australia. So after he passed away, my sister and I decided we would do a pilgrimage to meet the family, and which we did, which was very emotional and wonderful, wonderful time. But after that, we were in Venice and we were going to visit a little island, St. Giorgio's Island, and well, actually, we were going to visit the island that has the cemetery on it. I can't remember the name, sorry. And I'd gone into a tiny little shop waiting for the ferry, and it was run by a nun. And the shop was full of all these exquisite silks and fabrics, offcuts. People donated for her to sell to raise money for charity. So I bought a bundle of silks and things. Of course, the colours were irresistible. And the nun asked us, what were we doing for the day? And I said, oh, we're going to this island. And she said, may I suggest you go to this island and see the church? Well, my sister and I, our whole trip was churches and art galleries. Both of us are interested in. So we went to the island she suggested, and we went to the church, which I found highly unremarkable compared to a lot that we'd seen, except that from the tower you had absolutely fabulous views of St. Mark's Square. Wow. But anyway, we were just about to hop back on the ferry, and my sister actually had gotten onto the ferry, and I was just stepping off the planks because Venice was flooded. And I saw this little sign just on a little poster, and it was of a vase. And I said to my sister, get off the ferry, we're not going. And she sort of stepped back off again, and we went down the side of the church, and we came across this amazing gallery. I think it had newly been finished. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. And we walked in to this absolutely stunning Carlos Scarpa. I suppose it was in a way a retrospective, and it was room after room after room of his glass. And I can't explain the absolute power and beauty of that work. I wasn't familiar with Scarpa, and it was like the most beautifully curated exhibition. And the vases were all set up almost like I set up my still life, in groups within cases. And I actually came out of that exhibition and just started crying. I was so overwhelmed by the beauty of it. And thus the homage to Carlo Scarpa was really just an emotional response put onto canvas from seeing that exhibition. It was a gift. It was a complete gift. And so I'm now a Scarpa devotee, along with a lot of other people, I suspect.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, other than it just being the most stunning image, Melissa turned me on to this little fact of the reflection, especially the darker red one with the turquoise interior, which I find is just so exquisite and detailed and beautiful, that we have a reflection there, and I'm assuming it is of you.
Yes, and that particular vase you're speaking of, actually I bought in Venice. So that was a lovely link as well.
And there's another tiny you in the vase that's broader towards the top.
There's I often make little appearances. Depending on the light in the studio, I'm often silhouetted against that large window. It's to the right of me here. And in my old studio, it was also to the right. Sometimes when I've painted those little supposed portraits of me in, I find them a bit too distracting, and I'll paint me out and just do a little abstracted shape. But in some of them, it's actually a really recognizable small portrait in silhouette. But I've seen people in exhibitions, sort of their eyes suddenly squint and they dash across the room and they do these little gasps and squeals when they see me in a vase. So yes, and the reflections, and you can't see it in that particular painting, but I do a lot of work on trays, which the images reflect down into the tray. So you almost get like this double image in reverse. And that all began really after my father, Clive, passed away, who I was extremely close to. And I was painting an exhibition to honour my dad, actually. And I thought halfway through painting this show, oh, what's going on here with all these reflections? It was when they really began. And I realised that I was actually reflecting back on my life with my father. And that this is how it was manifesting, was the paintings suddenly contained many more reflections than they had previously. So yeah, it's such an interesting journey. You know, I don't think things need to be too obvious. I think they can just quietly enter into our work and be meaningful to us. And I think when we do things with integrity and from that really deep heart level, which I think and I hope my work always comes from, it's somehow people viewing the work also feel that connection in a way that's not really explainable. But I guess I've over the years had letters written to me. Some of them have been incredibly moving, explaining that those people have been going through grief and very difficult things, and how the work has helped them. And when those letters first came to me, I felt very humbled by them, but I also started thinking, you know, what's going on here? Like, they're still life paintings. They're not paintings of crucifixions or, you know, subjects that you might think, oh yes, well, I can see how you would react like that. So I just think there's many mysteries that we don't understand, but that we can acknowledge as something very precious that's going on when we're creating. Yeah, there's magic in the world.
There is.
I believe that, yeah.
I'll put the painting back up, and it's a very different color scheme than the first one we looked at. I find this one very soothing.
Yes, well, I think a lot of people, that was from the last exhibition that was this year, and I can't tell you how many people said that was their favourite painting. I had that idea of a green painting in my head for at least 12 months before I did it. I didn't quite know what it was going to look like. It was just, and Melissa, I see you're just a wonderful colorist. So
thank you.
well, it's true. And so you'll get it. But I just get these aches, almost like a physical ache for color. And the paintings will often be sort of rattling around in my head for 12 months or, you know, quite a long time, not fully formed, but they're there just niggling away at me. And then when you come to do them, you know, that expression of whatever it is that's been just there internally, comes out. And in this particular one, I have to tell you a funny story about it. The vase at the front with the patterning, I actually tried to buy that at auction as a painting prop, and the auctioneer was distracted and didn't put my bid in, and I didn't get the vase, and he was so embarrassed afterwards that he asked the lady who bought it, would she loan it to me to paint.
Oh, that's so precious.
She didn't know what she was in for, poor thing, because I had the vase and I kept on trying to use it and it just would not cooperate. And I tried it in all sorts of different setups over the years, and it ended up being 12 years I had the vase. I know this because I'd kept the letter that she typed when she loaned it to me with the date on it. And I thought, oh my God, I was determined to use the vase. Anyway, I did the painting, and last the vase was there in all its glory. And I rang her thinking, oh, she'll probably be really upset with me, really rude. And she could have been more charming or kind. And she said, that's fine. I'm just really happy you painted the vase. So I had the opportunity then of meeting her at the exhibition and handing the vase back, as well as one of my signed books. Great gratitude. But yes, quite often the props have a bit of a story behind them. But it was so lovely working in that colour harmony, as in this one that you've just put up.
So lush.
It's Look, about 10 or 12 years ago, I did a series of 3 paintings of groupings. I'd done one, and then I started, and it was actually a dream, and it was in very similar colour harmony to this one. And I dreamt this painting, not this one, but this one I'm talking about from 12 years back. I dreamt it it was so vivid and so clear in the dream that I actually got up in the morning and went into the studio and set it up as though I'd already painted it. It was just there. It was just so weird the way it all worked. And I did this painting and it was very beautiful and I loved it so much. And in the dream, I'd sort of seen that there was 3 paintings in total, and I couldn't see the other 2 as clearly as the first one, but I had a sense of them. So I set the second one up and I was looking at it and I thought, oh, how strange. There's 13 objects and there were 13 objects in the first one. So I thought, I'm not quite sure what that's all about, but I'll follow. So the third one also had 13 objects. And so this 13 objects, no idea what it's about, but I've since then done quite a few of these complex groupings with 13 objects. Some of them have been called, this one was called Datura, which is that flower in the back, Datura with 13 objects. Others have just been called Still Life with 13 objects. And then, you know, it's also fascinating. So one of my doctors was looking at one of the paintings and I said, oh, something about the 13 objects. And he said, oh, I see. And it had a ruby glass like this one at the centre with the other objects around. And he said, oh, I see that ruby glass as Christ and the 12 other objects as the disciple. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's fascinating. But would you believe someone else completely independent, knew not this story or him, looked at one of the paintings and said, I see it as Christ and the disciples. And I thought, well, okay, well, here are more of the mysteries arriving. So I don't know. I don't understand that. I'm fascinated by those comments. I'm quite happy to take them on board, think about them. But I guess it just comes down to how others view our work, that, you know, everybody brings to paintings or artwork their own experiences, I guess, and their own views of the world. And yeah, as artists, that becomes quite interesting, that sort of feedback. I'm not sure we should be influenced by it, but it's certainly worth contemplating.
Mm-hmm. Nina, I don't know if you as a photographer have ever felt this, and you, Criss, as a painter, but sometimes I have the sensation that a painting wants to be born and I get to be the vessel that pours it out, but I'm not entirely responsible for it. And it sounds like, Criss, that happened to you a little bit with this series of 13, and maybe it does to you too, Nina, with your photographs. Or
I mean, the drawback, which is often the advantage of photography, is that I only get to create what I actually have or see. You know, there's a certain limitation to what is presented to me. And that might also be part of, you know, not doing this full time and not having the luxury of, you know, sitting and wait somewhere until it's perfect. But and one of the reasons why I love, you know, drawing myself a little bit, because I feel I have more control over the birthing process, so to speak. Talking of birthing, I would love to see something with flowers and then also talk about the gardens because we are also approaching time. So
Oh,
to kind of bring that up.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This
So-
one's a little different, Criss.
Well, it's one of the works from quite a while back, and it was an interior of our home, and the kimono on the wall entered quite a few paintings, both in details close up behind objects, and it used to sit on our wall. Our home looks quite different to that now, but yeah, I used to really enjoy doing interiors. I don't do as many now, but I think that's just that you have phases and you explore them, and then you move on. Yeah, so the tulips were from our garden, and yeah, it's that little painting from memory is on a panel. I did that a bit at one point. Had beautiful cedar panels cut and then gessoed the surface, and they were just lovely to work on.
How did you manage the tulips? Because they can reposition every 15 minutes.
Well, you remember this is not a very large painting.
Okay.
And they do. I mean, tulips and poppies, nasturtiums,
Move.
absolute horrors for moving. You know, you can go and have a break from the studio and have a cup of tea and come back and it's all completely all over the place to where you started. But yeah, that's okay. I had it drawn out, and you usually have enough reference from what's going on to keep going. But I just really, do you mind if I just go back to what we were talking about a moment ago?
Please.
Because it's a really important part of my work is that spiritual aspect of the work, and what you were saying, Nina, about feeling as though you're the vessel. I really want to acknowledge that I very much have that belief that we have some sort of beautiful gift and blessing if we create. And I do think there's something greater going on. I actually always say a prayer before I start painting. I always give thanks at the end of the day, and ask for guidance, because I think having the gift of being able to create beauty is truly a blessing. So
Beautifully said. It really is a blessing.
yeah, it is.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That's I love that there's more than just the art. There's a reason and a bigger that something that we cannot name, control, or see that gives us the agency to do what we do.
There's a nun, and I should have researched before I said this. I can't remember her name, but it sort of said it for me, and that was that she said that painting is prayer made visible, and that really resonated with me.
I got chills. And more chills.
That's our garden at where our home is still, but we're still in the process of moving. But that's the garden this spring. I think there's about, I think this year I'll say only planted about 8,000 tulips. To have planted about 20,000. But as you can see, it's glorious, and
Yeah.
therein lies a lot of inspiration for colour.
Absolutely gorgeous. I've enjoyed seeing photographs of it online at different seasons.
Yes, well, on my Instagram account, I usually have photographs of the garden throughout the seasons, and it really is so beautiful. My husband David is an amazing guy. He's got the most wonderful horticultural knowledge, and he's incredibly generous with his knowledge in taking tours and explaining to people how to be better gardeners and how to get better results. I really love that about him. And I think I'm not alone there. There's a lot of people love his generosity of spirit.
Mhm. So, talking of spirit, can you talk a little bit to how you support one another? Because I understand that you get a lot of your inspiration from the gardens and actual flowers or plants from the garden for your still lives.
Absolutely. And I'm painting less flowers than I used to. Again, no explanation. It's just evolving that way. But much of my material, in fact, most of my material, unless it's Australian natives, which we don't grow, comes from the garden. So when we bought the property 37 years ago, as I said before, it was just weed and paddock. So I was quite involved in the designing of the gardens originally with structure, etc. And so we worked together. I have vision, but I don't have that horticultural knowledge. So often I'd say, I'd love to put da-da-da together, and David would look at me and say, well, if you think they're all going to flower at the same time, they're not. And so it's like, oh damn, you know. So, you know, it's a real learning curve for me. And he often says to me, you know, gardening's not like painting. It's changing all the time. Where you do a painting and it's finished, the garden is never finished, and nature does not obey. So, yeah, and I guess, you know, isn't that a wonderful part about working in a garden or with nature, is that it brings a whole other respect for nature. And nature really, I think, has played such an enormous role. I mean, people comment on my colour, but nature puts together the most extraordinary colours. And, you know, we look at them and we think, oh gosh, how does that work? That shouldn't work. They're almost like discordant colours, but there they are, looking fantastic. And of course, it's because the balance is perfect. And that then relates back to when you're using colour as a painter. Sorry, I've gotten off the track a bit here. When you're mixing colour, it's so incredibly interesting because you can have a colour that's almost right for what you're doing, and you can put a tiny increment of colour into that, and it will either just go flat and dead, or it will just go the opposite way and just be like this huge, beautiful note, almost like a musical note singing away. And look, I've said it before, I really want to reiterate, because I think colour is so complex. I know I'm good at colour, but I really don't believe we will ever truly, fully understand colour. It's just extraordinary. And the more you use it, the more you bow down and say, it's amazing. It's magical. It's just probably one of the most or biggest reasons I paint is to use colour. I just cannot imagine not having colour and being surrounded by colour. And David and I, getting back to us as a couple with this, he will often grow specific things for me to paint quite at the moment. Oh yes, he in the last exhibition there were these amazing, beautiful, rare iris he grew for me, and these iris actually grow in the Negev desert in Israel. And I looked at these fragile plants and I thought, how can they possibly survive in those harsh conditions? And they're these fragile, beautiful, beautiful things. And you can't quite get your head around it. You think, well, there's nature once again, just stunning us, you know. And over the years, he's grown many lovely, lovely things for me to work with. So look, I'm so privileged. And like, if we're working in the garden together, we'll often have quite fiery arguments. We're both quite stubborn and both have quite strong ideas and opinions, but we sort of get there, and I think we're both very respectful of each other's strengths, so we make it all work. That was actually how I met David. Was I went to get flowers from him to paint.
Wow.
Yeah. So here we are, 40 years on.
So we always have the two last same questions that we would love to ask you, if we may. One of which is actually, Melissa, did you want me to hit that other one before we go there?
I really do.
Okay, good. Great. All right. So, and this is also I want, which we should make that one of our last questions in general. So how are you different as an artist now, Criss, than you were when you started out?
I'd have to say I'm much more confident. But, you know, 60 years of doing this work does bring with it, I guess, as you become more, adept and good at what you do. And I think the confidence is a really important thing. As a younger painter, I was not at all confident, and David has really helped with that as well, encouraging me. I think I'm braver than I was. I think my skills are much more honed. And again, it's whatever you do, the more you do it. And really, if you think you're going to make it as an artist by fluffing around and having a good time and not being disciplined, it won't work. It won't work. I mean, the discipline, and I really see that as a bit of a gift from being a dancer for 10 years and 7 classes a week in those early days. The discipline from dancing, you wouldn't imagine that was going to help my painting, but I'm sure it has helped.
Yeah.
You have to be in the studio. You have to be prepared to work hard. You have to be prepared to forfeit social things and late nights at times if you're working on something.
Yeah.
You basically have to behave like you're dedicated to what you do and be so.
Yeah, it's like, Melissa, you started to become a professional violinist.
I did.
I would imagine that would be a similar rigorous
Total crossover.
Yeah.
And music, don't you think, Melissa, is so related to painting?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I really do.
It's such an amazing crossover there. Yeah. I've heard through someone who bought my work, who actually imported violins, that when musicians are playing, that they actually feel as though they're painting colour. And
Oh, wow.
And also, I often feel as though it's a really musical thing, using colour. It's like notes. It's like notes of music that you're picking up, tiny increments, and putting them together. It's a symphony. It's a wonderful crossover.
Yes, it is.
Melissa, you want to take us away with our penultimate question?
I would. I'd love to.
What's
Can
coming?
you tell us about your favorite one or two works of art or objet art that you live with in your home or studio? One or two.
Oh, one or two that I live with. Okay. Okay, I'm actually just in the process of having to downsize and sell a lot of collection, which is going to be really quite gut-wrenching.
Oh,
Okay, so I have a very beautiful artwork. I can't tell you who it's been painted by. My husband bought it for me. It's a Madonna with a Christ child on her lap. It's a small work painted on copper with extraordinarily beautiful fine detail. You actually need a magnifying glass to appreciate it fully. That is very, very dear to me. And I collect quite a lot of other artists' work. And I feel mean to pick out one.
it's a tough question.
So the question really is, the house is on fire. Which one do you grab before you run out?
Okay. Okay. The house is on fire. I'm grabbing my Madonna. Okay. Madonna, and my apologies to all my artist friends whose work I own.
Well, if we spoke every day, you could have a different favorite every day.
I could. May I just mention that I have a very dear female friend, Carolyn Graham, who does extraordinary woodcuts and lino cuts, mostly of birds and animals. And she's a very modest person and an extraordinary artist who doesn't understand her, I don't think, who doesn't understand her own power and how beautiful her work is. And I have a lot of her work, and I am truly nourished by that work daily.
I will look her up.
Work will be staying.
Excellent.
Thank you.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much for this, having this wonderful conversation with us and letting us peek a little bit behind the curtain.
Well, thank you both very much for inviting me onto the show. It's been a pleasure.
I love your work so much. I saw it on Instagram, did not yet have much of an idea of who you were. I knew you were from Australia, but from seeing the work frequently and then putting some effort into following it, I've become a real lover of your work, and I'm so grateful to get to see it even from a distance digitally. I've never had the privilege of getting to smell it and touch it and see the paint texture, but I'm deeply grateful for your work, and I'm so happy about this conversation with you and Nina today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. It's so generous. Thanks.
For all of you who are watching this as a replay by just the way it is this time, since we had to pre-record this. Thank you all for spending this hour with us and listening to us. And please, if you have questions or comments, leave them in the comments for us to respond to them and engage with you. And we will be back next month with another edition of An Artful Life, curious conversations about the ways humans make and use art. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much, Criss, for spending time with us.
Thank you very much.